Hey Laowinners, it's Laowinner here with another video, and I don't know why I'm so exuberant and happy. I'm actually shivering here in the Dongbei winters. Shout out to Zack P for the background. Beautiful snowy day here in northeastern China. Now today we're going to talk about something that you guys might find interesting, and it's also something that directly affects me and my friend Winston and all the channels that we run together. And that is that we're constantly combating with this horrible situation where we don't get compensated as well as other YouTubers because of the nature of our content. Now, although that sounds kind of normal because you'll have things like political channels or channels that cover controversial things that aren't going to get the same sort of monetary compensation as something that covers, say, I don't know, like water parks around the US, or I don't know why I keep thinking of amusement parks, but like a roller coaster review channel or something like this, versus maybe a gun review channel. Those two channels will get compensated differently because advertisers will typically shy away from something that they find kind of a bit weird or a bit dodgy, right? So like if you had a hunting channel that shows the death of animals, maybe Toyota or Coca-Cola wouldn't want to advertise on that because they don't want their brand synonymous with the killing of animals or something like this. It's basically, in general, how advertising kind of works, especially if you're talking about advertising in social media. That being said, advertising in mass media is completely different because you can have a CNN or Fox News story about the massacre of Syrian children, like gassing Syrian villages or whatever, on the nightly news, and then it'll be like, don't forget, you can save 15% or more on Geico. And then they'll have like a chicken nuggets advertisement or a Happy Meal advertisement for McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, in the same breath as that horrible story of human atrocity. There's always been this kind of unbalanced garbage that we have to deal with when dealing with social media versus mass media. Now, if you remove that element, if we're just talking about social media, there's been a few controversies where YouTube has been kind of on the defense because advertisers are complaining about where their ads are showing up, and the whole algorithm, the whole way advertising works, has been it's been a change and a shift throughout the years. So it's gotten much smarter. It's gotten much more intelligent on what kind of content certain ads will come up on, right? And it's also tailored to the viewer. So, for example, if you're watching a YouTube video and it's showing you an ad about an Acura or a Mercedes or something, based on your search history, that might have something to do with the fact that you've been looking up new cars or you're interested in cars. Maybe it's coming up with mattress advertisements because you were looking up different quotes for mattress prices or something. So it can be completely tailored to you. It can also be tailored to the content, the specific type of user that would watch a certain type of video. Now that's like basically how advertising works. Now, unfortunately, because both Winston and I cover material that is related to China, especially stuff about human rights abuses, stuff about the Chinese government, stuff about censorship, and all this kind of stuff. We do get shut down quite a bit with demonetization, and demonetization is when the advertisers kind of band together and tell YouTube, this type of video is not what we want to advertise on. So then YouTube comes up with like a list of schematics. It's like, does this contain violent stuff? Does this contain sexual content? Does this contain whatever? And they have a whole list of things that you have to select from. By and large, our content doesn't have anything overtly controversial. It's just that we are critical of oppressive regimes, whether it be the North Korean regime, the Chinese regime, or any dictatorships around the world that have a poor track record with human rights. We'll tend to discuss those things without too much graphic detail. But still, it gets kind of fishy because a lot of times these videos will still get demonetized, meaning that the advertisers say, we still don't want to touch this content because it might ruffle too many feathers. Okay, fair enough, right? We've covered that many times. And actually, if I'm totally honest, things have been getting a little bit better since I've addressed it the first time. I kind of got hit with a scandal where it was, I was getting attacked and flagged, and basically my videos were getting demonetized for things that had nothing to do with the video, specifically violent video game footage. And none of my videos have ever contained violent video game footage, obviously. So basically what was happening is the CCP army, the Wumao, the pro-Wumao army out there, was being sent out to flag all the videos that were critical of China. And they do this all the time. They do this with any content that's critical of the Chinese government. They'll go and mass flag these videos. And they found, for example, at that point, that violent video game flagging, if you flag content as that, then the reviewers won't watch it. and it'll automatically get demonetized, right? So they found like a little success story in that one. Now, since I've addressed that, things have massively improved. I haven't really dealt with that too much. But one thing that happened, and this is pretty alarming, is what I wanted to address, is that brands won't touch us anymore. So in a channel, if you watch any YouTube channels, they'll say, brought to you by Skillshare, or brought to you by whatever. Brought to you by, what are some other popular ones out there? Dollar Shave Club, brought to you by Wix or whatever. You have these sponsored advertisements that are not hard coded, but hard filmed baked into the episode. So it's not YouTube offering up an ad. It's a sponsor that has reached out to a YouTuber and said, we'd like to do a sponsorship on your channel. And these are actually the bread and butter of how people make money on YouTube by and large. Because if you have a hard baked in advertisement in your episode, people can't really skip it. They can't click like skip ad. They can skip forward in the video, but they can't click skip ad. So it means that there's more interaction with a product. And the thing is with these sponsorships is that they tend to pay more too. So a channel that is covering things that is like, let's say a car channel has a direct baked in advertisement or a sponsorship from Advanced Auto Parts or something, that company is going to pay them more than it would just be a random ad on their video from YouTube. So these are incredibly important for the average YouTuber out there. And it's really one of the only ways you can, outside of crowdsourcing and stuff, crowdfunding, one of the only ways you can actually pay the bills. Now, the reason I want to bring this up was I've lost pretty much all of my sponsored ads. Pretty much every company that I previously worked with, or every company that was going to potentially work with, has pulled the plug on me. And there's a reason for that. And I'm not going to name names because I love these guys and I work with this company that has found me sponsors in the past. But they were pretty point blank with me and I really appreciate their honesty. But they basically said, listen, going forward, it's going to be really hard to find any sponsorships because, number one, this is one of two people that have told me this. Number one, the supply chains for a lot of these companies are still in China. And just you criticizing the Chinese government is enough to make these companies not want to do business with you because they're worried that it will affect their relationship that they have with their factories in China, with their products or whatever. Or if it's not even a product that's made in China, they're worried about their future potential business that they're going to have with China. Because people still have this bizarre fantasy that their product, especially like an internet product like Facebook or something, is going to someday make it into China. Someday China's just going to open, the CCP is going to open up China and the floodgates will be there, 1.4 billion people waiting to suck up your product, you know? And what they don't understand is that that potentially will never happen. And the internet is getting more and more cracked down and censored every single day in China. So we're talking about a situation where the internet market is not going to open up. In fact, it's closing off for protectionism so that domestic apps, domestic products in China can have the upper hand. So a lot of these companies they're misplacing their trust in the Chinese government, in the future of the Chinese government, really. But that aside, these companies won't touch me anymore, and I'll point out a couple, like Dollar Shave Club dropped me. I had a couple other ones that were like sponsorship boxes, they dropped me. I had a couple travel companies, they dropped me. I had a couple apps and hosting websites, they dropped me. And the only one I have left, and this is the ironic thing, is I actually do have a sponsor in this ad, and this is a great example to show you what a sponsorship is, but NordVPN has continued to work for me. How long they do so in the future, I'm not sure. But NordVPN has stuck through, and I think it's probably because it's somewhat related to, censorship in China. People use VPNs in China to get past the Great Firewall of China. So without further ado, here's NordVPN. I used to think VPNs were just handy for when I lived in China to get past the Great Firewall of China's censorship, but actually I use a VPN every single day. Without NordVPN, I don't know what I'd do because I gotta keep my internet data safe and protected and make sure that no one's snooping in on what I'm doing. I think you should use one too if you're worried about people seeing your identity or perhaps getting your credit card information. You see, using a VPN keeps your internet data safe and secure. It's basically kind of like a code that encrypts all of your data and makes sure that only you have the key and no one else can see what's going on. The VPN that I choose is NordVPN because it's super easy to use. You can hop around to all different kinds of servers around the world. And it even helps you get past things like region locks, which makes it so you can't see certain streaming content on Netflix or on Steam or on all this kind of stuff in different countries. If you use NordVPN, you can actually hop around the world and see the internet from their perspective and unlock different content. Don't forget to go to nordvpn.com/Laowai86. You'll get a huge discount off of a 2-year plan. And not only that, you'll be helping to support the channel. Don't forget to go to nordvpn.com/Laowai86 and use the code. So that's an example of a baked in kind of ad. And that's how we get paid the most. But I've lost, and my other channels have lost pretty much all of these. This is all we have left is the Nord one. And the reason is I told you, the supply chains are either still in China or there's a fantasy that they're still going to work with the Chinese government in some way to get their product out there or app out there. And that's really a huge shame because you have way more controversial stuff out there being sponsored. And to me, it shows cowardice in a lot of these companies because it's not just hurting someone like me, it's also hurting the future of any critical voice against China. The reason I made this video is not to make a huge sweeping thing about, oh, poor little me, I'm not getting my sponsorships anymore. The reason I did this is because it's not just gonna be me that's gonna be affected. I'm like the canary in the coal mine. I'm very overtly critical of the Chinese government. I'm very overtly critical because it's personally affected me. It affects countless Chinese people I know in China. And the Chinese government to me is also a threat in other countries around the world with its current influence and authoritarian ruling style and human rights atrocities. It's just not something I can support. And it's something that I understand well enough to criticize. The problem is that with me being the canary in the coal mine, being the test dummy basically to see what companies are willing to work with someone like me, this affects other people as well. So it'll get to a point, and this has already happened in Hollywood, where you'll never see a critical voice of the Chinese government. Name me a movie that is critical of the Chinese government right now, like a Hollywood blockbuster. You know, remember you used to watch all those movies and they would like kind of poke fun at the Soviet Union and it would be like the bad guys over there in the Soviet Union. You won't see that happen with the Chinese government. They are deeply in bed with Hollywood to the point where they self-censor on American soil before the movie even goes to China. So that's the danger of this whole thing, is that we'll have educational systems that are self-censoring for China and changing historical references that our children will learn. We'll be changing things that critical voices that need to be able to point out human rights atrocities like the current genocide in Xinjiang, persecution of other religions, or even, back to military coups like are happening in Myanmar right now. There are a lot of things that need to be talked about in regards to China's human rights abuses, and those conversations will be shut down when there's no compensation allowed to be given to those conversations. So it's pretty terrifying. I mean, like you can say, oh, a private company can do what they want, but private companies are being led around by the fact that China is dictating what they do. And that's terrifying if we're talking about companies that have barely anything to do with China to begin with. And not only that, but it's not just private companies, right? We're talking about huge institutions, our colleges, our political systems, really. The way that China operates is through bullying and intimidation and to cut off anyone that doesn't do their bidding. And that's happened to me for a long time now. And I wanted to point it out because I'm not going to be the only one that gets cut off. So it's up to companies out there that want to sponsor not just people like me, but want to sponsor people that are honest about their criticism against human rights abuses, that are critical against authoritarianism and oppression, that stand up for free values all around the world in free democratic countries. And at the end of the day, it's companies like that that are actually going to change the narrative, because that's currently what's going on right now. There's too many people in bed with the Chinese government, whether they know it or not, that kind of dictates what they do and who they support. So basically, I want to say props to the companies that stand up against the CCP, and props to the people that actually are public about that, because there's a lot of people that reach out to me that are like, thank you for getting the message out, because I can't say anything. Please don't mention my name. Please don't show anyone this. I'm so scared. I want to go back to China. Oh, I'm so scared about this person I know in China, so don't mention me. I understand, but I can't carry the entire weight of the world on my shoulders here about this. And I appreciate it. I will stand up for you. I'll be your voice. But at the end of the day, it's going to take more than just me and my friend Winston and our channels to stand up to something like this. It's much bigger than that at this point. And I want to say I super appreciate everyone out there on my Patreon, patreon.com/Laowai86. we have a whole different community that we have over there. It's really, really awesome that you guys support me over there. And that's really, at the end of the day, what's going to make this continue going forward. Because if there's no sponsorships and things like that, then the capital that is required to run channels like this, I mean, it's not free, right? It's a full-time effort. We have, what, 5 channels now that we run. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of our time, obviously. We don't have like little day jobs on the side that can fund this. We put 24/7 into these channels. So really appreciate everyone that can spare a little bit over there, and that's awesome that you do that. Your generosity means so much. But let's make this a part of a bigger narrative. Let's make this a part of some change in the future. Hopefully people can wake up to the actual evils of the CCP and not be led around by their greed. I want to say thank you so much, Laowinners, and I'll catch you on the next one.